issues, but I'll let you come in the supplementaries on the dairy side. But the decision of the UK to leave the European Union is one that creates considerable challenges for the agri-food sector. The UK is by far our largest trading partner. Last year we exported almost 5.1 billion worth of agricultural products. This included more than 1.1 billion in beef products and almost 970 million in dairy exports. Ireland is also the UK's largest destination for its food exports, worth 3.8 billion last year. This bilateral trade takes place on the basis of harmonised EU rules on animal and public health and labelling without complex certification, quota limits or customs duties and tariffs, and it is underpinned by the vital support of the CAP budget, to which the UK is a significant net contributor. Given these linkages, and as the UK is a net food importer, both countries have a strong interest in maintaining a close agri-food trading relationship. In addition, the resilience of the Irish agri-food sector is well recognised, and this, together with the strong commercial relationships built up over years of trading, will help us to negotiate our way through the challenges ahead. It is important also to bear in mind that the precise implications of the referendum outcome will depend on the trade and other arrangements ultimately negotiated between the European Union and the United Kingdom. These negotiations may take up to 2 years and perhaps longer, and over that period existing arrangements will continue to apply. Nevertheless, my department has engaged in detailed contingency planning and for the possibility of this result, and has published a summary of the key actions we are taking to address the contingencies arising from the UK's decision. The most immediate concerns for exporters centre on the euro-sterling exchange rates. It should be noted that the fall in the value of sterling against the euro, while significant, is not unprecedented. Nevertheless, a sustained period of currency volatility could be of concern. In this regard, the Central Bank of Ireland has pre-established contingency plans to deal with market volatility surrounding the referendum result. The Bank will engage with the Department of Finance and individual financial institutions regarding the potential risks. Actions by the ECB and other global actors will be monitored closely. I have also asked relevant agencies, including Board BIA, Enterprise Ireland, BIM, to provide practical guidance to SMEs. Last week, Board BIA announced a number of measures to support food and drink businesses. These measures cover areas such as managing volatility impacts, providing consumer and market insight, deepening customer engagement and extending market reach, with the aim of helping companies maintain their competitiveness. Similar support is also being provided by Enterprise Ireland. Aside from currency fluctuations, the main areas in which potential impacts are foreseen are in relation to tariffs and trade, the EU budget, regulations and standards, and custom controls and certification.
Thank you, Minister.
While complex issues also arise for the fisheries sector.
Deputy Heydon.
Thanks very much, Minister. And I know we discussed it here last time on ministerial questions before the vote on Brexit, and you were outlining some of the efforts you were taking to communicate with Northern Ireland farmers and others, as your predecessor did also. And unfortunately, from an agricultural perspective, the vote we didn't want has happened, and you've outlined some of the linkages there, why there's a very good reason we didn't want it to happen, and it is going to be a challenge for us. And there's a lot of concern in the agricultural sector, in the food sector, from an awful lot of farmers and business people that have direct concerns there. So, I would ask that you ensure when the Taoiseach is meeting the various leaders around Europe, that those specific concerns in relation to agriculture are raised, because I think it's one of our strongest cases as to say why we do need special consideration for the position that Ireland is in. And also the bloodstock industry, Minister, that is worth €1.1 billion to our economy, that is inextricably linked to the UK in terms of our sales of foals and horses, but also racing, any tariffs, any borders, any implications of trade there would have a devastating impact on a bloodstock industry that's worth a huge amount to our economy and employs over 16,000 people. And these are the key points that just need to be borne in mind, that I'm sure you and your officials are bringing through.
Thank you, Deputy O'Keefe.
Margaret. Minister, I suppose one doesn't want to be too much repetition here today, but it is a crisis situation. Everybody talks about when the British will trigger the Article 50. My concern is the 6 months leading into it. It's like the sheriff being sent to a property and the person in trouble gets word of it. They could clear out the contents. And that's my concern. There's a window of 6 months before the incoming Prime Minister proposed to trigger Article 50. And I'm concerned that the damage could be caused by then, in regards to our trade and our deals and that. I suppose my overall question was speaking about the milk sector in general. Over 12 months ago, the organisations were putting the government under pressure about the milk price collapsing. At that time, it was just barely above the cost of production in regards to 28, 29 cents over 12 months ago. We now see down at 21, 22 cents a litre base price. There's farmers out there, Minister, gone very silent. Not silent because they're doing well, silent because they're afraid to talk out. There's concern there. I go to shows, agricultural shows around the county, and you'd know that there is a problem there, but they're saying nothing. It's a new kind of a form of protest, saying nothing. Like, I think that they're afraid that they're not being listened to.
Thank you, Deputy.
They want him with 12 months, and I would ask Minister, that the Brexit more emphasis be put on the next 6 months as opposed to the post period of when they do leave the EU. Thank you.
The Minister.
I thank the deputies for their questions. Could I say, just following the context of Brexit, that the government, across all government departments, has done a lot of contingency planning, coordinated with the Taoiseach's department, and we're obviously feeding into that because we would be representing the interests of the agri-food sector, which is, in terms of its interest in this issue of Brexit, is a 5.1 billion export industry to the United Kingdom. So, at that level, we are doing everything we can, and are very conscious that the immediate impact is in the area of sterling, and I've dealt with that issue previously. And I acknowledge the point made by Deputy Heydon in respect of bloodstock exports in particular. And in fact, I had a meeting yesterday with representatives of the bloodstock industry, and this question was raised specifically as a concern. And obviously, we're very anxious to maintain that. And in the context of the preparatory work that the Taoiseach's department is doing now, you appreciate he was visited Angela Merkel earlier in the week. Minister Flanagan has met his German counterpart. I will be meeting with colleagues in the Council of Ministers. We're creating an awareness and elevating an awareness of our unique position relative to the UK in terms of our trading exposure there. Now, on the points raised by Deputy O'Keefe from the dairy side, I will be attending next Monday a Council of Agriculture Ministers meeting in Brussels, and this matter is again on the agenda, and we're expecting some proposals from the Commissioner in respect of proposals to assist the dairy industry. We have previously successfully prosecuted at a Commission level the case for assistance. We've had the October 2015 announcement, which was paid earlier this year by my department, 12.7 million matched by 12.7 million exchequer funding, which went to both, and Deputy O'Keefe will be interested in both of these, it went to both the dairy and the pig meat sectors. Now, I appreciate in terms of the scale of the losses, particularly this year where prices have dropped significantly, that they are not the answer in themselves, but direct aid, bringing forward the single farm payments, talking to the banks, which I think is significant, because I appreciate the point which Deputy O'Keefe made. I've met with all the three major banks, Bank of Ireland, AIB and Ulster Bank, and creating an awareness that there is a cohort within the dairy industry who are significantly exposed in terms of investments that they've made, and asking for forbearance from the banks in that context. I have to say that got a good hearing from the banks. I appreciate, particularly at the back end of this year, there is, in a way, the perfect storm brewing with merchant credit, tax liabilities and super levy bills coming together. So we need that kind of forbearance from the banks, and we're working ourselves in terms of leeway which we've been given by the Commission to develop other financial packages that might assist farmers, particularly in the context of the differential cost between a package that we might be able to put together and the cost that they're paying presently for credit, particularly merchant credit and short-term loan facilities from banks.
We're running out of time.
So we're working on a range of issues. My apologies.
If that's okay. Deputy Heydon.
Thank Minister for the response, and absolutely my next point was about financial institutions and others that have that, and it's good to see you're on top of that approach. You might also outline, Minister, in looking at the contingency elements, is there any opportunities here that Brexit might provide for the agricultural sector? I know financial services and others, they're a bit more obvious, but trying to look for the silver lining in every cloud, that if your department feel there are some areas where this might benefit the agricultural sector. But I particularly welcome your comments in relation to the bloodstock sector. I think it's a key area that is very vulnerable, as well as that is beef production and otherwise, and it's really important that there is a coordinated approach from government, as you've outlined, from both the Minister for Foreign Affairs, the Taoiseach, and your own office and officials as well.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy O'Keefe.
Minister, thank you for the response. I suppose in regards to financing, I wouldn't know, would you, within your own government, would you be prepared to put in place a low-cost credit scheme under a state aid mechanism, would that be possible? And I suppose earlier you mentioned, that the cap payments are secure for this duration, but even though the mid-term cap review is ongoing at the moment. But Minister, you put a plan out for your food harvest, as in food-wise, which goes into 2025. So farmers need to be able to look forward in regards to projected incomes and sources of income from the EU as well, how they can make a living, Thank you.
Just on the latter, and I appreciate in the dairy side, the markets are extremely difficult, but markets do bounce back. And I think it is a time, leave aside the Brexit thing at the moment, and that complicates what's a difficult situation already. The markets will recover, and I don't want to kind of make predictions as to when, but there are straws in the wind, and I don't want to put it any stronger than that. That at least we may have bottomed out, and the recovery might be evident in 2017. But that remains to be seen. But I also think it's important that we don't add to the volatility in the market by making statements of doomsday scenarios. The market will recover, and we will manage to ride out the sterling issues, and we will keep, if there is a requirement for additional policy interventions and instruments, obviously that's something the government will consider in due course. But we have been in this space of where sterling is relative to the euro today on a number of years in the past 10 years. And on your issue of low-cost credit, that is an option that we're exploring at the moment, because I do appreciate, relative to cost of credit internationally, our banks' charges are out of kilter, and we are working with people like ISIF and the SB Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland to see how we might address that issue. We are working on a range of fronts. Deputy Heydon, I don't see an upside on the agricultural side of Brexit. But what we are doing is trying to ensure that in the negotiations on exit, that the unique relationship which we have with the UK in terms of our dependence on them as a significant market is recognised in those negotiations.
Thank you, Minister. Members, that concludes Minister's questions. We now move on to topical issues. First item is in the names of Deputy Kenny, Ferris, Martin and Pringle, and you have 2 minutes each. Deputy Kenny. Sorry, apologies.
3 minutes each.
Okay.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Basically, this is in relation to the situation in the National Maritime College. And the National Maritime College has trained over 400 people over the past, I suppose, year or so, and we now find that they're not being certified. And the situation means that all of these people who, basically, if they don't get this situation resolved, they're going to be out of work. And they can't, on the 1st of January to 2017, they can't take up positions anywhere, not just in Ireland, but anywhere in the world in regard to this. And the situation means that it's totally intolerable that they find their situation that they cannot become employed on any vessel, anywhere, until they get the certification put in place.